So it's officially been about 6 months since I have started my Airbnb journey, and in today's video I just wanted to kind of go through my story of how I got started, the unique strategy that I've implemented unrelated to what you've probably already seen out there, and then I also wanted to kind of give a little breakdown, a little sneak peek into how I've been doing so far. So let's get into it. In order to begin your Airbnb journey, you're going to need a home. And I purchased my first home January of 2022. I actually made a whole series on how to purchase your first home if you are a first-time home buyer. And there are so many ways that you can go about obtaining an actual property to put on Airbnb. Some people like to do rental arbitrage, some people like to purchase a fix and flip, others just like to use a home that they have already been living in or a secondary home that they were able to purchase. For me in particular, I went the route of using my first home. I lived in it for about 8 to 9 months, and while I was living in it, I kind of fixed it up just a little bit. There were some things that came up along the way, but I took care of those. And in the process, I was able to really put the home together to prepare it for Airbnb. So this includes any minor cosmetic repairs, even the furniture, purchasing of the furniture and placing it in the home. I did all of that while I was living in the property. The goal for my Airbnb was always to create some form of passive income. I did not purchase the home with the plans of living in it for 30 plus years. So that was first and foremost. I made sure that I was in a very accessible area. So you want to do all of your due diligence beforehand. Even if you're purchasing a home that you want to live in for a few years, you still want to make sure that it's in a good location. You want to make sure that you're getting a great deal, so that way when you do go to put it on Airbnb, you're able to make more than what your mortgage is, for example. How I set everything up was very unique, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, to what most people would do with their Airbnbs. After the repairs were made, I asked a few of my friends who are doing this with several properties under their belt, and I watched a few YouTube videos, but those strategies just didn't sound like me. So what I did was I tried to basically take a little bit of everything and only took the parts that I wanted to take from it. So as you are also watching videos on how to begin or improve your Airbnb business, take that into account. You don't have to do it exactly like how so-and-so is doing it. Just do what feels right for you, because as you scale, it'll be an easier process. So there's 3 major strategies that I come across in the Airbnb space. One being short-term rentals, another being midterm, and then another being long-term. I decided to go with the midterm rentals because that just made the most sense to me. It requires little maintenance and little communication between myself and the guests. I usually get contacted by insurance companies who are finding placements for their clients for about 1 to 3 months. So it just works out perfectly. Yes, there is a cap on how much I can make per month, but at least I have the peace of mind knowing that this place is only being rented out to one person, and I have the coverage of Airbnb. Obviously in the future, I'd like to move a little bit away from that and finding something that's a little more profitable. But for now, being that this is the beginning of my journey, this was the safest option for me, and as well as the most profitable option. So once I chose my strategy, I created a budget, and the budget includes furnishing the home. I think I spent about $5,000 total to put furniture in my 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home. Very basic things. I shopped on Target, I went to Wayfair. I did have a friend who I paid to do the interior designing. She did a phenomenal job. But I told her, I wanted to keep it very simple, very modern, very clean, and just create this Zen-like feeling for guests when they walk in. So based on that, I was able to get away with purchasing items that were on the cheaper side, and we did do a lot of Amazon purchases. So just kind of when you're furnishing your Airbnb, keep in mind that you don't have to go over the top with the furniture. You know, I was walking in Walmart the other day and I was like, wow, these Walmarts are really stepping up their game. I don't recommend furnishing your entire home with Walmart, but you can get some really nice accessories and additions to kind of vamp up the space. So once I created my budget and I purchased all the furniture, I put it all together with the help of a few lovely friends and family. I then found a photographer that was specifically an Airbnb photographer. So this is probably one of the most important pieces to the puzzle. Is the photography and the photos are everything. So I would invest heavily there, and that was included in the budget when I was creating all of this. I spent about $250 for a full package, got photos of every room. It was phenomenal. And then I also got a nice little video to show if a guest ever needed it, but I have that now. If I wanted to in the future build a website, I can add that video to my website. Then after I got the photos and everything, I was so excited to finally list the property. I did initially list it on multiple platforms, but as time went on, I noticed that those people that were finding me the most were from Airbnb, and they were, you know, asked to stay for months at a time. I did set my settings to where guests can stay a minimum of 14 days because to me that just was going to be the easiest, because I am not in the state where my home is located, and it just makes it easier for me to communicate with my cleaning crew or anyone that may need to come to the home to prepare it for the next guest. So minimum 14 days is what I started with. I listed on Airbnb, I listed on Vrbo, and I listed on FurnishFinder.com. What I noticed was that a majority of the traffic was coming from Airbnb.com. So that's kind of over time, I think about 2 or 3 months in, I realized that's where I want to put most of my energy into. I do get some inquiries from FurnishFinder.com. However, my pricing threshold is here, and a lot of the times the inquiries come in way below here. So I was just happier with Airbnb because usually it's insurance companies that are reaching out and they have X amount of dollars that they're allocating towards this client, and if your home fits the description and the client likes it, the insurance company is willing to pay whatever your fee is. No ifs, ands, or buts. That is just how it works, and I love it. So that brings me to my next point, which I kind of alluded to in the last point, which is finding a reliable cleaning crew. No matter what strategy you go with, you want to have a cleaning crew that can come there at, you know, as soon as you call or whenever a guest checks out, so that in between guests coming and going, you have a clean space for them to come to. It took a little bit of time for me to establish because I went through about 3 or 4 cleaners before I found one that I felt like was reliable and understood the needs of my property, as well as my own needs. I'm not one who wants to be super involved in the whole process, and I'm going to make another video about how I automated all of this even after setting it up, so that way I just, you know, communicate with the guests and they check in, and that's all I have to do. But getting a great cleaning crew is super important to the success of this business, and someone who you feel as though, or a company that you feel as though has multiple people, so that at any given time they can send someone to your property. I also recommend, if you are someone who wants to be a little hands off with your business, that you create a communication or relationship with your cleaning crew so that they know, you know, exactly how you like things. And it just takes a simple conversation. They're usually on board once that's been done. So now for the fun part that I think everyone's been waiting for. How much have I made so far in my Airbnb experience? And I usually don't do this, but I just want to show like how possible it is. Obviously with a lot of education and a lot of planning, strategic planning, it's very possible. So I've been on Airbnb for about 6 months, and you can see it's very sporadic. Let's see if it'll zoom. Okay, so you can see it's very sporadic. So that's the one thing about this strategy that I want you to keep in mind. If you do end up going with the midterm strategy, you are waiting for insurance companies to reach out to you. You are waiting for those long-term guests to reach out to you, midterm guests to reach out to you. My definition of midterm is less than 6 months, and more than a month. So 28 days to 6 months. That's my definition of midterm. Long term is obviously anything more than 6 months, and then short term is anything less than 28 days. So with the midterm strategy, you are going to have a more sporadic calendar, but when you get those big fish, they're really, really big. So you just have to be willing to wait around for those. You can do a combination of a short-term and midterm strategy to help you reach your financial goals or whatever that is. If you're not in a position to have your house sitting for a month or so with no guests, then I would definitely recommend starting out with the short-term strategy and then building your way up to the midterm strategy. But let's get back to this. So I have about $12,645 in earnings for the last 6 months, with February, May, and June being my biggest months. June is expected, but this is an insurance stay, so most likely they will still be there. So with all that being said, I've realized that I've kind of maxed out my current strategy, and there are really only 2 ways of scaling this. I can either purchase more properties, or I can work with companies to get larger contracts, aka insurance companies. I've even had film industries reach out to me. I've had businesses reach out for employees that they are planning to relocate, for example. A lot of the time it does come down to whether or not the client or the employee or the actor or the film crew actually likes the property. So just keep that in mind as well. You can have tons and tons of companies reaching out to you, which you will, if you offer midterm stays. However, it just all comes down to whether or not the client likes the property, and you will always find someone that does. It's a numbers game. So for every 10 people that inquire about the property, maybe only 1 will actually book the property. So keep that in mind. In conclusion, this whole journey was not the easiest. I would say a lot of it is attributed to the complications that I had after purchasing the home. And again, I did a home buying series so that you can avoid a lot of the mistakes that I made. But essentially, once those were resolved, everything came together really nicely, and here I am 6+ months later, from the first day that I officially started my Airbnb, and I can honestly say it's been amazing. It's not something that is currently my sole source of income, and I don't think it will ever be, but it has been a great addition and has allowed me to not only have equity, build equity in my property, but also to maintain a cash flow so that I can invest in other businesses. And to close this all out, I think this strategy is a great idea for anyone who is looking to sell their home, looking to purchase their first investment property, someone who's looking to leave the country and they're not really sure what to do with their current home, or someone who's just looking to make extra income. I think this is a great strategy for those of you. Anyway, I will be making future videos on my Airbnb journey and strategy, so stay tuned.